The editing in Dune Part 2 was everything that you could ever ask for in a film. It was dynamic, epic, and thoughtful, all at once. So yeah, the Oscars got it wrong. And today, we're going to talk about the absolutely brilliance of this movie with the editor of the franchise, Joe Walker. In this in-depth masterclass interview, we're going to break down the absolutely unreal Harvester attack scene.
I love how nightmarish it is.
We're going to show you the internal metronome of the edit.
It's like, build, 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 go.
And why dropping the sound out here was so important.
You're breaking all forms of physics.
Abruptness is good, right? It just makes it visceral.
And we're getting a look into Hans Zimmer's Beethoven-like composing style. This is the Editing Podcast, brought to you by LTX Studio. And this episode is part 2 of our 3-part series on the making of Dune 2. And if you're new here, please subscribe.
Charlie!
Reload! One of the most interesting details about this film was the attention to the sound. A lot of the sound was helping informing some of the cuts. It seemed to be a very precious detail amongst the entire film. And I think one of the biggest moments that I really enjoyed, that kind of really gave me the best experience, was the use of the sound in the harvester scene.
No.
I love how nightmarish it is to fall to the ground. It's like the sort of stuff that happens in my worst nightmares, that you're chasing after something and you suddenly discover yourself naked and stuck to the sidewalk. Maybe that's too much detail, but
Making him vulnerable, making him like just helping that tension be raising, that he's again incapable of overcoming that obstacle.
yeah, you never want him to look as though he's mastered something before he's challenged by it. The Harkonnens have far more sophisticated equipment than the Atreides did. We know what a harvester sounded like with the Atreides. Everything is wheezing and creaking, whereas the Harkonnens would have more of the latest Apple design.
I guess even since there's no music here, like the sound design of that, of just all of the motors and the engines, and they were getting louder and louder and louder as well. And so that was still felt like music to me in a way.
It's a matter of design from not only production designer, camera department, VFX, and the action on set is a sense of the rhythm of this machine, that these arms, and there's going to be a moment of protection that is going to soon be lost, and the sound is all amplifying the rhythm of that, so that Paul knows how to kind of time things for a run.
Music comes back in again, kind of like there's like a countdown towards it.
There's a countdown towards it. And there's a cat and mouse thing going on here.
Go!
Well, even for that, like even just with the bazooka to then open up at the end, for that to then kind of then be the signal.
Yeah.
Why was that so important for you for that?
Yeah, just rhythmically really appealing, isn't it? It's like, build, 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 go. It's just a nice hard click.
Yeah.
Oh, shit!
I like the fact that despite all the kind of grandeur of a sequence like this, when he starts running, he feels even more vulnerable. That we cut the music out, and it's just him breathing and straining to get to the end line, right? You know, he cursed, which is also, I think, wonderful and always gets a good reaction in cinema.
Yeah, always gets a good laugh when that happens. Something I noticed is that is an incredibly powerful gun that is like viscerating people, but yet the sound of those bullets is
all Richard King.
Yeah.
And, you know, they spent a long time like testing and doing things because they aren't bullets, right? It's a laser gun of some kind. And there's a whole load of elements. I mean, he'd do a better job of explaining what went into it, but it's like literally you're just basically seeing the air catch on fire.
For me, it helped characterize the futuristic technology of this.
Yeah.
For those enemies to kind of still see the Fremen as like insects in a way, it's like kind of just like shooting them with a pellet gun. There's
an idea to get across, which is that right at the beginning of part 1, in the sort of opening battle scene that is shown,
they ravage our lands in front of our eyes. Their cruelty to my people is all I've known.
They send a missile in, they kill Harkonnens and Fremen alike. It's an indiscriminate death toll.
Yeah, and it's just kind of nothing to them in a way.
Nothing. It's just erase everything.
That's kind of mostly just told for just for the sound of it. Yeah. Do we even remember when like the sort of the zips type of sound effects came along? Because the earliest version I can think of is in Saving Private Ryan. I need back. Well, that became like a much more iconic sound bed for it.
That zoop sound. It was around before, but never quite so heavily featured.
Yeah,
it's a very subjective thing as well. It's the sound you would hear.
There was lots of like vertical style editing.
It's hard crashing between perspectives. It just makes it visceral. Abruptness is good, right?
You're so into like that contrast style. It's like we got the massive explosion that's quite loud. You cut away, but honestly, I never questioned the fact that where is the sound of the copter? The fact that she's kind of laughing about it is very funny.
Sound cuts out, and there's a moment of suspension. Where's the damn ornithopticon? And then bang.
It's kind of like you're breaking all forms of physics. Technically, we should be hearing this at an overwhelming like explosion sound.
Yeah, and arguably it should have landed by now.
It's right. Narratively and emotionally, that took priority rather than it just being realistic.
Hello, I'm back. The main intent for this show is for me to learn how I can be a better filmmaker. And the hack is to talk to those filmmakers to learn how to do that. But I've realized I am in a place where I do need to start applying the knowledge that I have been gathering. So it is time for me to maybe make a short film or something. But it's the prep. The pre-production. And I'm a terrible storyboarder. I can't draw. Like, do I need to start a pre-production podcast? I know this is work that has to be done. I actually want to make sure that I can do it in an efficient and interesting way. LTX Studio is the storyboarding AI platform that makes all of this possible. So if I'm thinking of doing a low-budget, lo-fi sci-fi movie, I can even add a still from a movie I love using the style reference feature. Okay, admittedly, when I did that, it was a little bit too bright. And I can play by finding that style that works with the light modder and also changing the weather. I'm able to sort of ideate the shots and style that I want right here. So I can change the aspect ratio, name my character, and what his vibe is, and then use that to start generating entirely new scenes. I'm storyboarding. I'm creating my story. I'm doing pre-production. For someone who's genuinely terrible at pre-production, this genuinely might be useful. So I would encourage you to give LTX Studio a try as well. So click the link in the description, give it a go, and start your free trial today.
100% Hans.
Yep.
But the weirdest thing is that you'll often see things very crude for the longest time, almost to the point where you have no idea when it's going to turn up, and then right at the end, the really great version turns up, and you're going, okay. It's kind of a test of mettle as an editor, to hold on to something that is not looking that good yet, to have faith that it's going to be amazing when the whole thing comes in.
Does it also then, because the VFX is still developing, it hasn't hit that level of believability yet, so you're kind of having to like discipline you wanting to like, this shot doesn't work because it doesn't look good enough yet?
I'd sum it up as saying that the kind of brilliance of a VFX shot is in one place in its conception, and in the second place in its 983rd iteration.
Yeah.
We cut to people cheering. It's like, it's keep rolling. You know, we
Yeah.
could have settled. There was a lot more material I could have shown of the wreckage and of them recovering from falling down the dune. And it was just like, no, keep driving, keep driving. That's pace, isn't it? Is like we're going fast, 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 slow. Cutting between scenes is a bit like when you're writing. Is it a full stop? Is it a comma, a semicolon, or a slash?
What punctuation ends a scene? That's interesting. I never thought of it that way. Emotion seems to be such a key thing for you. And letting these emotions work with each other, blend with each other, complement each other.
It's all about story, teasing, and how to kind of keep attention, and, you know, how to keep people fresh. But it's all about story, you know, cutting a big epic. I think it's all about story with a TikTok video, right? I mean, it's like just a different form. We're not doing such dissimilar things sometimes.
In the earlier parts of your career, you kind of started as a composer. And so you've learned having that ear and understanding, especially since you're always talking about rhythm as well. And so it always seems to be, the way you describe it is that as you're even doing like the first edits or even the storyboard edits, the sound design is as important of the part of the process for you, alongside even just cutting to the storyboards.
I suppose it's my way of feeling my way into the kind of sense of the scene, but also, you know, I genuinely don't see a difference between composing music and editing a film. I don't see the difference. It's all about managing elements over time. In this scene is a good example of leaning into things that subvert or are abrupt or kind of disrupt. There's nothing worse than seeing an audience like sink back into their seats and just let it play over them. Somebody once put it quite well and said, they're not so interested in bums on seats, but eyes on stalks. And I kind of like this idea, you know, that you're trying to kind of keep that freshness, even over a long span. It's a 2-hour, 44-minute film.
So the sound design and the sound variety is one of the key elements for you to then make sure that people are consistently paying attention.
Yeah, and it seems to kind of blend really well with the whole concept of Dune, which is this sort of human drama in large landscape. It's a kind of contrast. It's not the only way I can cut a film, but it just seems to work with this, to have very, very dynamic shifts and to kind of keep it very visually and sonically refreshing.
Because of your experience also being a composer as well, you seem to have lots of conversations on working with Hans Zimmer as well.
Yes. We worked together a long time, but I kind of, you know, I do admire his method very much, which is to kind of, you know, he builds sounds for ages before, you know, the actual kind of composing takes place. He fills up the sandpit, for want of a better word, with instruments and tools, playable tools. And then he starts kind of working on themes in much the same way, I think, as Beethoven did. I really don't think it's such a far stretch. You know, Beethoven will have sweated forever over and then extrapolates from that whole symphony. And I don't think what Hans is doing is that dissimilar. He's kind of building a bunch of themes that, like stickle bricks, stick together and you can use in different forms. He writes a suite which is independent of picture. It's not normally something that he scores to picture. And he's very generous to editorial. He gives us everything broken down into kind of instrumental food groups. And also, of course, we can start playing some piece of music against the scene and just seeing where things stick. We found Loire's amazing vocal, you know, ha ha dee da da dee. That was just something that was in the track, and we thought, you know, the placing of that is very keen. That's our kind of 007 theme, right? And so you don't want to play it too often, and he allows us a certain freedom to find that within the music himself.
Wow.
And also, of course, as the cut changes, we can cut the stems and do a little bit of rudimentary in the cutting room, but very much more, finessed by our music editors. And then that'll be sent back, and then they make changes, and then they record real instruments. It's a real genuine collaboration where we're changing the cut when we hear what Hans is doing against it. There was one moment where he was like trying to find some theme, and I remember watching him do it, and he was like struggling to shape something. And after a long while I said, what are you actually looking for right now? And he said, I'm looking for a musical idea with the efficiency of the word fuck. It's international.
So this is how I will survive. By being Harkonnens.
One of my favorite cues from the movie was when Paul decides to go to the south, and it's like it's a reveal of the black sand, and then there's just these huge drums. Again, it's another like vertical cut. It's very quiet before, and then it is just extremely loud. What was a process of just going from like that scene towards probably just one of the most epic sequences in the movie is just Paul's walk towards the south.
I was always advised by my editing mentors never to cut on the beat because that was considered uncool, and I say fuck them. let's cut on the beat, and let's make the beat subvert your expectations and surprise you. I'm looking for hard cuts, right?
Yeah.
How much harder can you get? We've done this job of establishing that South has a different look. It's kind of volcanic. It looks volcanic. It doesn't look like the North. And it was like a very big deal in our storytelling process to really emphasize the different looks, and so that, because there's a lot of people talking about the South, but nothing is dramatized. And then you get these incredible. They found some particular part of the desert where they shot this. It's not a straight 4/4 riff. This is something with syncopation.
Yeah.
And also there's no other sound, which is great. And we just indulge this little moment of his final confrontation with the South.
You said syncopation.
Syncopation's offbeat.
Offbeat, yeah.
1, 2, 3, 4, 1.
Yeah.
That's a syncopation.
And so just that sort of weird lack of rhythm kind of helps towards it.
It's just don't settle back and don't relax. This isn't repetitive music where you're going to expect the thing to be in neat shapes. It's actually going to subvert you, pull the rug underneath you all the time.